Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Kirby Monday, so we're looking at the next issue of his Fourth World Saga from the early 70s, published at DC Comics. This is the Forever People, issue number 2, cover dated May 1971. Now Kirby at this time was working on 4 different titles: Forever People, Mr. Miracle, New Gods, and Jimmy Olsen, or Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen. So putting out basically 2 issues a month, 2 comics a month. So each of these titles is basically bi-monthly and kind of form, you know, the basics of the Fourth World and all of Kirby's creations in the early 70s for DC Comics. So right off the bat, I want to talk about just what the cover looks like, right? And also I'm going to mention from this point on with the Kirby stuff in the 70s, I won't be having to go back to the Fourth World Omnibus, even though it's a great volume. And it does allow me to kind of make sure I'm following everything in, you know, continuity, synchronicity. What am I trying to say here? Anyways, in a synchronous fashion, I guess. Anyways, so it's handy dandy for that. But yeah, it's nice to go to these original issues and see what they actually look like back in the 70s. You know, I've talked before about DC in the past, a few issues of Jimmy Olsen trying to incorporate Kirby's collage ideas. So this whole background here is basically just a cityscape. You know, I believe even individual kind of buildings cut and pasted together. And then down here, you've got a bit of rubble. It's just unfortunate that it still gives the book a kind of interesting, cool 70s vibe, I find, but it's just they didn't have the production value at DC, I guess, at this point to, you know, get some of this done in color, right? That would have been a nightmare, and just doing it in black and white already is not such a great thing. They're very kind of just diffused and hard to read. But again, I do aesthetically think it gives the comic that early 70s vibe. Which I really like. Mantis, the character, let's get it out of the way right away. Definite penis fingers everywhere, all over this cover. I was chatting with this guy online who posted something about in Challengers of the Unknown. I may have talked about this before, but I'll talk about it again. A character in the Challengers of the Unknown while Kirby was at DC in the late 50s, I believe, right before he moved back to Atlas or Marvel. And the designs for that character, the color scheme and everything is pretty darn similar to this. So it really feels like Kirby just took that design from back in the late 50s and modernized it, at least in 1971, with his current style and the current way of designing costumes and stuff, and the more angular and exaggerated elements. It's been for a little while, at least. I don't know if I've talked about this before, but, you know, as we move through the 70s, I feel like the Aztec or Mayan cultures somehow influenced Kirby's art, right? He probably sees, he's an avid reader. I've talked about National Geographic and Scientific American, so he would see that stuff there, obviously. And I see some of that more and more being worked into his character designs all throughout this decade. Mantis is a good example of it, at least the beginnings of it. And even at Marvel, he was already kind of doing a little bit of it there, I feel like. He's really pushing the designs forward, and they're really, at this point, his own. His, you know, Kirby designs are just very distinctive at this point. And at DC, I feel on that side of things, he's being given maybe a little bit more free reign, or he just, you know, because they've kind of handed him these 4 titles, his creativity is just off the charts. And he's just throwing just tons of crazy concepts out there all throughout the New Gods saga. So we're going to get a confrontation between Mantis and Infinity Man, who we've met before. Infinity Man is kind of like, you know, my reference point for the concept is Captain Planet, right? Where, you know, the Planeteers come together with their rings and Captain Planet appears. In this case, this is, you know, now I can backtrack it and see, obviously, that concept, excuse me, was not original to Captain Planet. It's been around for years. You know, and even this in a way is based a little bit kind of on the Shazam Captain Marvel concept, right? Of changing from a kid to a superhero. In this case, it's these guys, the Forever People, the main titular characters of the book. When they get together and combine the powers, you get Infinity Man, although they kind of disappear. So they actually combine into him. So I don't know if they go somewhere. We might find out throughout the rest of the series. For now, it's kind of a mystery. It's going to happen this issue again. But in the concept of Infinity Man, too, in Forever People, will slowly kind of be phased out. Just like some of the more human characters that were first introduced to early on in the series, Forever People and especially New Gods, and that'll be phased out slowly but surely. But when, I guess, because, you know, Kirby's really just interested in the cosmic concept and the mythology of that world, which is what I'm more interested in as well. So these early issues of Forever People and New Gods with kind of human conceits and characters are just a little odd, I guess. It's like he's brushing off some of the barnacles that he's worked up at Marvel, storytelling wise. And I'll just take the time to name the characters because I don't think I did it last issue. So Mark Moonrider, who apparently is based on Mark Evanier, who has started assisting Kirby in around this period. Big Bear. I don't know what to say about him except that I definitely feel like that character in X-Force is 100% just almost, you know, a ripoff of Big Bear. Rob Liefeld created him. What is his name? I can't even remember his name. He was with the team in that Mike Mignola drawn issue. He's on the cover too, drawn by Liefeld. This is always unfortunate when you get these Viking the Black characters, right? So why call him the Black other than the fact that he's a black man, right? So kind of this weird trope of the 60s and 70s, the Black Panther, Black Lightning, all of that, right? Again, it's like, you know, Mark Moonrider, the White, you know, or Seraphim, is that how you're supposed to say that? The White, you know, I mean, no one's going to point that out. The Brown, or it's just an odd thing they used to do in comics. Beautiful Dreamer, because you need a lady on the team, right? So there you go, guys. Let's crack her open, have a look inside. Kind of weirdly, the first thing I noticed when I was looking at this comic before the review, this little blurb down here, and I'll just read it out loud. And then we'll talk about it. This periodical may not be sold except by authorized dealers and is sold subject to the conditions that it shall not be sold or distributed with any part of its cover or markings removed, nor in a mutilated condition, nor affixed to, nor as part of any advertising, literary, or pictorial matter whatsoever. So just an interesting little tidbit of comic books distribution history here. You know, it was common practice back then to basically, once the books were past their cover date, they would take them off the newsstands, rip the cover off so as not to be resold, right? Obviously, some of those copies have found their way into other systems, you know, used bookstores and things like that. But generally, I guess once the cover was ripped off, you weren't meant to sell it, at least legally. So we got kind of a cool, just establishing shot of all the characters that we've already seen on the cover, you know, just kind of almost like a, you know, back in the day when you would take a family picture at Sears or something. But again, Kirby just introducing us to the characters, written, drawn, and edited by Jack Kirby, inked by Coletta still, unfortunately. Although I will say, I do find he is doing a better job than he was doing on Thor over at Marvel Comics. I don't feel he's quite cheating as much in the backgrounds, but you know, I just said that and I looked at this panel and this big white space behind everything here. I'd be surprised Kirby had left that and hadn't put any background elements past that plane there. So I feel like that's more of a Coletta thing. A nice establishing shot where basically they've stopped in the middle of the road with their, is it called the Wonder Wagon, right? Their crazy, you know, toyetic vehicle that they all ride in, and basically everyone around beeping and honking for them to get out of the way. Like all these car designs, which definitely seem of the period, but aren't necessarily, you know, specific models of cars. Kirby's good at observation, so it's like almost a Mercedes here, right? It's almost maybe like a Datsun or something truck. I'm not quite sure. This one too, almost, what does this look like? Not sure the name of the car, but maybe a Mustang or a Cougar or something. Anyways. But yeah, setting the scene, and it's funny because, like I said, now we've got, like, you know, the forever people hanging around, just regular old regular people on the street, and they're basically, you know, it's been talked about on the cover. I'll just bring that up again. You know, adding to the action are new agers is what Kirby calls them here, but basically the forever people, I've probably mentioned before, are Kirby's versions of like the young hippie kids of the time, right? And so what we're getting here is just regular old society, older people kind of reacting to these fantastic characters that to them, because of the longer hair, they just assume they're a bunch of hippies, right? And then, you know, this is kind of a funny sequence where Big Bear asks him, he's like, he gets called a hippie, and he's like, tell me, Mr. Corn, what's a hippie? And then this guy says, haha, that's easy. All you got to do is show him a bathtub, and if he runs, he's a hippie. Ha ha ha, it's like direct involvement with ancient vaudeville. I love that line. Like, only Kirby could come up with a line like that. You know, a lot of people criticize Kirby's dialogue. I think it's great, and I think he comes up with some just amazing lines that, again, are very evocative, just like his art, where it's like, it's not just the surface level, it's what it kind of triggers in your brain, and you know, the extra thought you put into what's been said or what you've seen in an illustration. That's the kind of effect Kirby has on me. So just this line, I know it seems innocuous, but it's like direct involvement with ancient vaudeville. So he's historically aware of vaudeville over on, you know, New Genesis, Supertown, where they come from. And again, just is kind of, you know, tickled to be able to participate it in real time with an actual person, you know. And then this is a common trope of Big Bear that I like as well, where, you know, he doesn't know his own strength. So here he hugs the guy. Thank you for the experience, brother. And it says crunch. So I don't know if he cracked a vertebrae or just it seems to be unconscious here. And just the one kind of lone guy reacting to it. Huh? And he's taken off here with kind of a dazed look in his face. So cops tell him to get out of there. They phase out because they've got the mother box, right? And I guess we'll find out after a few pages after this sequence where they've been sent. I feel like Kirby's pushing these kind of monstrous expressionistic facial expressions more already here at DC with some characters, right? With others, it's like, I love his dark side is he always just looks like an ancient statue, which I think is part of his appeal aesthetically. There's just something about it, right? That I like, and it's a simple, clean design, but he's still working on it because all through this issue, Darkseid still has just kind of the brief Superman underwear look, right, with the exposed thighs, and eventually we're gonna get to that. Oh man, someone commented, one of my subscribers, what that's called, and I forget it. I'm unfortunately, it's not a skirt, but I'll have to call it a skirt for now because I don't remember the name. Damn it. You know who you are. Let me know in the comments again what the word for that is. But yeah, I love Darkseid's design. Can't wait for the skirt. Or I guess maybe a kilt. Maybe you could say it's a kilt. I'm not sure. And Mantis, I like this idea that he's, right now they've kind of pulled him out of his pod, you know, before he's been fully recharged or re-energized, right? Or reborn. I don't know exactly how you want to put it. You know, his name is Mantis, so he's got insect-like qualities. So it's like some sort of cocoon where he rests and regenerates. I like that idea. A bit of Dracula kind of vibe to it too. So Darkseid basically tells him, you know, I need you to scare the Earth people is basically Mantis's mission. And he's like, done, but I need to return and power up before I can do that. Just kind of an interesting sequence, but that shows you Darkseid's power, where it's like, you know, he's really protesting getting pulled out of his cocoon, but once he's put in front of Darkseid, he's like, ugh, you know, he still wants to return to it, but he has to do Darkseid's bidding, clearly, right? All right, so we got our forever people. In a district where the abandoned buildings wait for the coming of urban renewal. Okay, so that's setting the scene. So they've been transported to a less affluent part of town, basically. And here's kind of the early version of Mother Box. It's kind of funny, you know, I've talked about how Kirby is forward-thinking and kind of a futurist. Eventually, he's going to shrink this down, and it's going to be about the size of a cell phone, and you'll see it in the New Gods and stuff with Orion. But here it's almost like, you know, the size of a tower. You know, it's like he kind of saw the evolution of the computer going from big to small, right? And I guess at this point in 1971, computers were already around. They filled big rooms, but it was already hypothesized, again, in those magazines that he would read, the computers would become small and eventually everyone would have one at home. I don't think that was just, again, an idea that was in the general zeitgeist of general society at that time. So I do feel like, again, a lot of the concepts he's introducing here are really cutting edge and probably blew people's minds, right, to a certain extent in 1971. Reading this in 1971, I assume most people get the feeling this is very kind of futuristic and forward thinking, right? So yeah, they meet up with a crippled boy. So he asks them if they are UFOs, right? Unidentified flying objects, basically aliens or something, which they kind of are technically, right? The New Gods, they come from another planet, so I guess they would be. And I don't know how, again, prevalent that idea of UFOs was in the 70s. I know when I was a kid, I'm sure people talked about it, but in the 80s, there was still a lot of doubt as to, and a lot of ridicule, and people talked about aliens and spaceships and things like that actually existing, which today already, you know, listen, with all the stuff that's come out with the United States Navy and military and stuff and all those videos, that really didn't have the impact I thought they would. It's kind of an odd thing, but I guess people are just generally disapproving anything they see. It's really hard to believe today what is real and what isn't, especially with some of those AI videos I've been seeing recently that are just going to get better. So yeah, weird kind of time in society. But anyways, let's move on with some Kirby. So the Forever People explain to the kid that they just have another way to travel, which is phasing in, right? Kind of like a Star Trek thing. Here men build roads from what they see. We build roads from what our sensors see. So again, kind of predicting AI, where now, you know, more and more cars and vehicles are going to be driven by the computers and not by the actual human contained within. Oh wow, I've hit the jackpot. You're from out of this world and you're real. So they encounter this guy here, Uncle Willie, and he's really not impressed by, I guess, the way they're dressed, and again, kind of interpreting them as hippies and no good nicks or whatever, kind of an old school mentality, right? But thankfully, you've got beautiful Dreamer here, who's kind of has a hypnotist kind of power, right? So she's gonna use this is such an old school way to represent, mind power, I guess is how I describe it. You'd feel like Kirby would come up with something a bit crazier. So I don't know if this is Coletta's doing or what's going on in this panel. Some of it seems uncharacteristically Kirby in this panel. Was it redrawn, or is just Coletta doing a bad job? But now we get to see real quick what Uncle Willie now sees. And of course, what he sees is definitely more pleasing to his sensibilities, right? And the Forever people are not going to have issues with Uncle Willie pulling his gun out again. Now we're back to Mantis with this sequence, right? Kind of given a bit of a horror vibe with Mantis. Like I said, that Dracula vibe. And again, using the cocoon popping out of it. And now he's fully charged and ready to scare humanity, right? Which is his mission from Darkseid. You can see him here. It says, there will take mere seconds to reach the surface, right? So he's kind of climbing upwards. So yeah, again, these sequences where the New Gods characters, or the Forever people in this case, are interacting with humans are just like kind of a slog to get through. It feels like it's there because it's editorially mandated, or there's some sort of idea that there has to be some sort of human tether. And eventually, again, that will go away and the focus will be more on the actual main protagonists and characters of each book, right? But I can kind of understand. It's almost like, again, Kirby's still has some of that Marvel baggage and is hanging on to it here. Love the sequence where Seraphin basically explains that, these little pods on his hat that the kid thinks are bullets, they're actually, he calls them cosmic cartridges. They're sensitive to the universe, to its largest and smallest limits. Here, hold one. It's like a DMT vape or something. If you guys know about DMT, if you don't, look it up and you'll find out. And this sequence will make a lot more sense. Kid says, it feels warm, like it was alive, like it was me, and I'm everywhere at once. That's the important part. And again, this dialogue, like Kirby, I don't think was doing psychedelics or drugs ever, but he's basically describing here the experience of someone who would smoke some DMT. And I'm everywhere at once. I see everything, and everything moves and makes a kind of beautiful noise. Harmony is the word, Donnie. You're listening to All There Is. So just these crazy concepts. Again, I always like to put myself in, the mindset of someone from 1971 who doesn't know about all this other stuff that came after. I'm sure some of the stuff was very kind of out there and mind-blowing for most everyone reading this. It is to a certain extent to me, right? But it's the sign of the times. Maybe that was in the zeitgeist as well, right? With the hippie movement and acid and all that. So it was at least talked about, right? So even if Kirby didn't experience it, he'd heard stories or read stories about it, I'm sure. And yeah, I just love this panel here, which is, the disembodiment of the kid, but, on the smaller level, but on the bigger level, he's part of the universe and stuff. Just a great representation of the psychedelia in general. But yeah, with the description of what's going on, very much feels like a DMT trip. And the little trip is cut short as the Seraphin sees on the news that Mantis has basically been destroying downtown. So of course rallies the troops, the Forever people, because it's a comic book, a superhero comic book, or post-superhero comic book almost, with these godlike characters, and they need to get downtown and save the day and stop Mantis. So they pull out the mother box, and that's what allows them to combine the powers. I don't know if I'm doing that accent wrong or if I'm remembering it right from Captain Planet. Don't be insulted, please. And boom, Infinity Man shows up. Now, Infinity Man, as we move ahead, I might be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure I'm remembering it right, because I read the whole New Gods Fourth World Saga when I got the omnibus originally, right? So that was one of the advantages. I could just read right through it, beginning to end in one easy format. And I believe Infinity Man takes more and more of a backseat, just like kind of the human conceits and characters that we see in these Fourth World Sagas. Infinity Man's gonna kind of take a backseat and eventually maybe not be there so much, and not at all. Because again, the book is called The Forever People. So really the interest is in the Forever People, and should be. And it almost feels like Infinity Man's an extra kind of tacked on, concept that doesn't really need to be there. I love these shots of multiple characters, right? Where, the artist takes the opportunity to have each character be in a different position, a different angle, doing something slightly different. And again, that helps, your mind kind of reads this as maybe one person flipping and jumping, or just, seeing every character's different movements to get their gun cocked and loaded. It's very just, again, Kirby in his art generally, it's very evocative, right? Of your mind continuing on, your imagination continuing on with the information you see in that panel. All great artists do it, right? When you look back, anytime there's, a bunch of characters doing the same thing who are wearing the same uniform, military guys, minions, all that, it's the kind of thing you want to be doing in the art. Again, one of these great expressive shots of Mantis, right? It's just the fury of his power. And there's even, almost looks like Kirby would do that, where you leave some of those lines white in the mouth. You can see here, probably slightly, hopefully on the camera. It almost looks like a bit of slobber, the Dale Keown kind of stalactite, stalagmite thing. It looks great here on Mantis. He's not afraid to go and exaggerate, and I love it. And the teeth as well become very angular. Love it. Also, this thing here where he rips off kind of old-timey marquee sign and throws it, because it's a neon or lit up sign. I guess not neon yet quite, but one of those light up signs with probably tons of bulbs in there. Imagine how hot that was. That's what the art's pointing out here, right? You can see the bulbs. And then as he throws it, just kind of breaking up and the electricity crackling. I love that effect here. Very cool. And yeah, I mean, basically what follows is a Kirby slugfest between Mantis and Infinity Man. Nothing wrong with that. He does a really good job. Always interesting foreshortening and interesting angles throughout the fight, right? Sometimes it's like when you see a panel like this, like take the words out and cut this panel out. This is just basically abstract, right? There's kind of a figure here, right? But if you didn't know better, this, take out the blam as well. But this is just, it's when he's using the graphics in such an abstract way, but to invoke power and destruction and things breaking up and energy, right? It's where he excels. It's that visual language that Kirby developed that everyone else copies, right? Sometimes I find the characters have just a little too conveniently, for example, like Mantis, he's I guess he can fly, right? He's powerful. He can dig holes up to the surface, and he can also freeze people. Or use freeze powers. So that's just an odd one that kind of feels tacked on, just kind of weird to me. And that's how he kind of, at least for a while, gets rid of Infinity Man by freezing him in a block of ice here. Love this shot of Darkseid again. That whole ancient statue look, I think, looks great. And a character like him, he's villainous, but he seems philosophical or like pensive, right? It's hard to describe Darkseid. He's not a physical, guy unless he really has to be, and even then, at that point, he's got the Omega beams, right? So he doesn't actually ever really kind of touch people. Is that maybe something I've just noticed there? Darkseid does he frown on physical contact? I don't know. Probably, or people touching him, right? I feel like that would be a Darkseid thing, but Jack Kirby's talked about in the past how he based the face on Jack Palance, right? The actor. I see it, right? The big cheekbones and stuff, even from this angle here. I totally understand the inspiration he got there. And yeah, it's like he's still working out the design, right? So he's almost there. I'm not sure if the boots are going to stay that thigh-high boot. Maybe they get tighter or something, like not quite as poofed out here on the knee pad. But yeah, it's like right here, he's got the underwear, and then he's like, oh, I'm just going to pull the top down. Oh, so he's added this element here, which eventually will become that kilt or skirt that he has, which is kind of like the final design. All of the power emanations here, again, I don't really like, I feel like Kirby probably, I've seen original art in his pencils and stuff. I feel like he probably did something that was a little more circular here, and Coletta's really going fast and inking it so that they're not round. When Mike Royer comes on, I know I keep harping about this, he's going to really kind of codify that and make the circles of the Kirby Crackle circular very precisely, and will help even more to kind of evolve Kirby's aesthetic in the 70s, right? So I think Coletta's doing a much better job than on Thor here. I definitely feel like he's being a little closer to what Kirby's putting down, but he's still giving it a slightly either of that period or a bit earlier kind of sheen and aesthetic, where again Kirby's looking towards the future. So Mike Royer is going to be the guy to bring in that exacting, clean, angular sheen on top of everything. Not much feathering going on once Royer comes on. Less of it, anyways. So, of course, Infinity Man finds a way out of the block of ice here, which is kind of interesting. I like he could have melted it, he could have done a lot of things, but I can manipulate the atoms of this Frigia block. I love that he called it something else instead of just a block of ice. Frigia block. Restructure it so I am freed. So he really just, breaks it down into smaller ice components, which, again, visually is just much more interesting and a good idea, right? And so, again, the battle continues. Now, unfortunately, Mantis has those weird kind of cape-like things on each side. The wings kind of connect to his legs. So Infinity Man's able to grab on. And just the use of all these lines here for the movement. Like on Mantis here, while pulling on the cape. Mantis trying to get away. All of this, I love that. Once again, that Kirby trope of when he's hitting or grabbing something, some violence is happening, there's a flash, right? And that just means less drawing and these, perspective dynamic lines all the way around. More of it here, right, as he gets punched. And again, the balls to just, I know that's Mantis's design and look, but how simple to just have this basic silhouette of the bottom of his legs and that cape bit. And you're out of that panel real quick. And this, again, sometimes somewhat conveniently in Kirby's plots. So Infinity Man, you hesitated to gloat, Mantis. It was your undoing. Try this Infinibeam. It will release your stored energy in one vast rush. So why not just do that from the beginning, Infinity Man? Infinibeam is funny as well. So basically Infinity Man has just sucked all the power out of Mantis and instead of, in his weakened state, I don't know, incarcerating him, bringing him to New Genesis Justice. Not quite sure. His goal was just to beat him down and have him run away, because that's basically what happens. We're saved. The law is closing in on him. Must use what power I have left to return to my power pod. So it's not shown, but I have to assume that Mantis did make it to his power pod. The dawn is breaking and Mantis flees. The city is safe from his attack. So this bit of dialogue is kind of convenient and a little odd, I gotta say, right? The fact that we're saved, the law's closing in on him. Well, no, not really, because Infinity Man says Mantis flees. Why doesn't Infinity Man run after him? Kind of odd. And he assumes the city is safe from his attack, at least for a while, but he's going to come back, right? Probably. Those who summoned the Infinity Man must now replace him. And, of course, boom, our forever people are back. And we do get a glance of Mantis back in his pod, back at home and safety. And, of course, now we do know that he will be back. And Darkseid has kind of a final word there. Mantis fights hard and fails hard. He cannot learn to plan. But Darkseid waits like silent stone. Yes, he does. I like that line. Waits and plans to flush his prize from its cover, Desaad. And if you would wrest the secret from him, give him to me. Desaad as well, right? Like, it's like Kirby's like, I'm gonna draw the face of the ultimate kind of sadomasochistic pervert, right? That's kind of what he's going for. It's almost like, it's very grotesque, and it like in this shot here, it's almost like Robert Crumb to me in a weird way. Not him as a character, but some of his drawings. There's just something there that's way off kilter and interesting, especially as opposed to Darkseid's kind of stoic, stone face, Jack Palance kind of look. And I've always wondered about the hair, those little strands coming down on Desaad's forehead. The way I see it, and I hope this is how Kirby meant it, but it feels like, Desaad's just, he's such a greasy character that his hair is greasy, and those are just like, he hasn't washed his hair in months under that hood, and it's just greasy little flecks of hair come down on his forehead. Great character as well. Like, the pairing, I think, is great. No one's ever done it better than Kirby, though, unfortunately. And it kind of makes sense because he is the originator. All right, guys. That is it for this issue. The Forever People issue number 2. If you're watching and you're still subscribed, thank you so much for the loyalty. I really do appreciate it. If you're not subscribed but you are watching, please do so below. It only takes a quick second for you. It really helps the channel out. It helps us grow. We're slowly inching our way towards 500 subscribers. That's when the channel becomes real for YouTube, and they start helping us out a little bit and getting us out there to other people who are into comic books just like we are. So everyone out there, thank you so much for watching. Have an awesome day.
Like, subscribe, like, subscribe.
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KIngCOMICS.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.